Hey, it's a warm welcome to you, the listener and the viewer out there, to another technically orientated edition or episode of the Professional Plumber podcast with myself, Willem, Klopper, your host, and my co-host, Mr. Richard Bailie. Richard, a warm welcome to you too.
Yeah, how are you, Willem? It's been, I wouldn't say a long time. We speak often, but it's been about a month, eh?
Yeah,
it has. Since we've done one of these. So yeah, it's been a while, I suppose. In that sense, it's weather's a lot warmer here, but.
And the previous one was sort of similar to what we're doing today. It takes on a slightly different approach and a different structure than what we usually do, Richard, because we refer to this episode and the one just before this that we did, we refer to them as case studies. And I know that in the previous case study, we looked at those trusses in the roof that were sawn away or
yeah.
to make space for the outlet pipe, the overflow outlet pipe of a geyser.
Are you still chuckling about that one? Eh?
It's if that was on Steve Brown of our Opsa's the Grumpy Plumber webinar or whatever, hey, imagine that. Imagine the language that would have come out there.
Yeah.
But we're doing a similar thing today, Richard. We're talking about a case study, specifically something that you came across regarding a safety valve. And we're looking at a safety valve and also the importance of a safety valve, for that matter, in this episode.
Willem, so I know that this is supposed to be a case study, so to speak. So a particular installation that, we looked at that we explore and open up and flesh out here. But so in a sense it is, but it doesn't pertain to only one installation. There are two videos that I'm going to show, which are two separate installations, but exactly the same outcome. And one can only speculate as to the cause of both of these, but there are only so many things that can go wrong with a geyser to that extent. And so in conjunction with looking at the actual cases that we're talking about, I thought we'd just touch on, and I know it's been done to death, what a safety valve is, why it's important, and how tampering with it can cause something like this to occur.
Listen, Meneer, I'm looking forward to hearing all about that and seeing the video clips that you have for us, some of the pictures that you want to show us, Richard. But what I think we must do quickly to our listeners and our viewers, let's cross over to a quick ad or advertisement for that matter. Please don't go away. Have a look at them. Stay tuned for them. They are for your interest and your benefit. Richard and I will be back right after these.
Shifter?
Ja, say.
Thank you. My bro, this CPD of this is a complete waste of my time. I know this thing very well. It's in my blood. I pride myself in this. I don't need help from a bunch of paper pushers while I'm doing the real work.
Are you someone who thinks, it can never happen to me? Are you someone who does not consider the long-term effects of not being willing to learn more?
CPD is not in place as a burden to the plumber, but rather as a mechanism to ensure that you remain up to date and current with new material, products, standards, and of course, ways of doing installation.
In addition, the CPD Rewards program's intent is to ensure that you receive great rewards while in pursuit of becoming a better version of you for the benefit of yourself and that of your customers.
So here's how it works. Depending on your level of tiers, whether you are blue, bronze, silver, gold, or diamond, you stand a chance in being rewarded with discounts on COCs, Proud Plumber t-shirts, your annual renewal, and of course, various other prizes.
Welcome back to this technically orientated episode of the Professional Plumber Podcast with myself, Willem, Klopper, and Richard Bailie. And now, just before we went into the ad break, Richard and I said that today it's going to be sort of a case study about something that Richard came across, and it's also just going to be very informative in a technical capacity, talking about a safety valve and the importance thereof. But before we get into the importance thereof, Richard, let's just clarify and properly define what a safety belt or a safety belt, what a safety valve is.
So, yeah. Look, we commonly refer to it as a TP valve. That's just a short version of an acronym, I suppose, for its longer name, which is Temperature and Pressure Emergency Relief Valve. So just for those that aren't plumbers, I know that all plumbers know what this is, so just ignore the next 15 seconds. But for those that don't know, it is the last line of defense on a geyser, a pressurized cylinder. And so it's got two functions, and the hint is in the name, a temperature and pressure. So for temperature safeguarding, it has got a thermal probe which sits in the body of the water of the geyser. It penetrates into the actual geyser water itself, and it's got, I'll show you a picture or two. It's got a very, very specific kind of a wax, and then on top of that wax within a copper sheath, and that wax it has got a very, very specific coefficient of expansion, and it at a certain temperature it expands by a certain amount, moving a rod, which then opens the valve. So what it does, it will sense temperatures up to within a preset range, and then past a threshold, it will allow a lot of water to expel out of the geyser, and in so doing, bringing the temperature of the geyser down, because at some point when the temperature of the water in the cylinder has cooled sufficiently, that wax will then again shrink, bringing the plunger down and closing the valve. So that usually opens up at around 98, between 95 and 98 degrees Celsius. So just before the boiling point of water. And so that's the temperature safeguarding part of what the valve does. As for pressure, in a separate mechanism, same plunger, so to speak, the same valve actually that is sitting on the seat, it simply has a spring above it. So the plunger from a temperature perspective was below, and remember, it was pushing that valve upwards. We also have water from the geyser also trying to push that valve upwards, but on top of that valve, there's a spring, and it is preset at a preset tension, and it would start to discharge water if overpressurized to a factor of 150% or 1.5 times the rated pressure of the geyser. Sure. So for example, if you had a geyser which is 100 kPa rated, your TP valve would be 100 kPa TP valve, but the opening pressure of it would be closer to 150 kPa, sure, if that makes sense. So for a 600 kPa geyser, you got a 600 kPa TP valve, which marked 600 kPa, rated 600 kPa, but it actually will only open closer to 900 kPa, 150%. So from a pressure perspective, it's 150% of the rated pressure of the geyser. And from a temperature perspective, they're all pretty much close to 95, 98 degrees Celsius. And these valves will then open up and allow the excess pressure or temperature to be expelled from the geyser. So that's basically what it is.
Listen, I know that plumbers already know this, and I think that to an extent that some consumers may now have a slight grasp better than what they had before after that explanation of its function and what it does, and how it functions. You explained pretty well, the little spring at the top and the little probe that goes into the tank itself, and when at which times they are activated to perform its tasks. Richard, have you got any pics that maybe you want to show us or share with us, that you've got maybe a slideshow that you've got to share with us, that or can share with us?
I'd just like to show you two slides which have basically a TP valve cut in half, or a section of TP valve, and you can see how it works. Okay.
All right, so we're going to give you an opportunity to quickly share your screen, and then, yeah, let's see what you've got for us.
So, Willem, as you can see, this is a very nice little representation, or a show and tell, if you like, of what goes on inside of a TP valve. And you can see that probe has it's not just wax. It's a proprietary substance, but it's similar and it resembles wax, but it's a very, very specific substance that is there. And you can see the little rod that it pushes against with a plunger. And in the right-hand pic over there, you can see that plunger, when it lifts up, it's going to open that little seat, or that little valve that is sitting on the seat there. And as I said, that would be for the temperature sort of reading or probing, and the opening. But for the pressure, it's a pure spring-loaded mechanism. And you can see that quite a sturdy spring on top of that TP valve there. And it's a simple matter of, if the pressure inside the geyser overcomes the pressure of that spring, the water will leak out. And so it's as simple as that. This is the next slide is just a drawing of the two states of discharge from a TP valve. So on the left, you can see it is opening because of too much pressure, and you can see what's happening there. You know, guys can pause this, and I'm not going to harp too much. This isn't a technical lesson on how a TP valve works, but you will see that the probe, from the temperature point of view is not touching the washer.
Yeah.
It's away from it. It's pure pressure from the water lifting that valve. And on the right-hand side, that's when the temperature probe comes into play. And you can have almost zero pressure, or just 5 kPa of pressure in the geyser. But if it's too hot, that temperature probe will open up and lift that plunger in the same way to discharge it.
Sure.
So yeah, so it's a nice little drawing just to sort of visualize how these things actually work.
I think, Richard, for those who are only listening to the audio version of this podcast or this episode, I think we can share those images with them. They can just call the PRB to maybe send them an email of those two slides that you just showed to us, so they can also see that. It's always interesting, Richard. You know, it's one can learn, and you and I have had this conversation many times before. One can learn like a parrot that this thing is fitted here, and it's called this. But it's another thing to understand how it works and what it does, and the reason why it is installed in a specific way, and the reason why the functionality of it on the inside works in a specific way. So I think it'll be very interesting for those who were only listening or are only listening to also see what you showed to them on the picture. Richard, I want to ask you quickly, why is safety valves or TP valves, why are they necessary in the first place? We spoke about their function. Why are they so sort of, let's say, the importance rather, the necessity to have it in the first place?
Well, we spoke about temperature and pressure. Now, those two things are regulated by other means in a geyser, normal geyser, namely from a temperature perspective, the thermostat would regulate the temperature of the geyser. So it's a mechanism by which it'll switch power on when the water cools down to a certain threshold, and heat it up to another threshold, and then switch off electricity to the geyser, in simplistic terms. So that's a control device. So the question is quite valid. Why do you need a TP valve? The other thing is pressure. You've got a pressure reducing valve on the incoming side of your cold water into the geyser. And simplistically, high pressure for it reduces the pressure and feeds it at a preset pressure. So we've got a thermostat and we've got a pressure reducing valve doing those two functions, but they break. They are fallible things. They malfunction. And we mustn't forget that we've got a pressurized sealed container with a heat source in our ceiling. And if something goes wrong, and it's not if, it's when, because things break. A thermostat is a 200 Rand piece of or 250 Rand piece of equipment. They make tens of thousands of them at a time. They're not perfect. You know, you might get one that sticks. It's simple. It happens. So the TP valve is there as the last line of defense. It's there to take care of emergencies should the prior or the primary mechanisms fail. So it is an absolutely essential part to get right in terms. It's such a simple thing, Willem. It's such a simple thing. It's a little of this size. You screw it in and it's done. But it can cause such devastation if it's not understood and installed correctly.
And yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind, Richard, is an exploding geyser. It's like a sitting time bomb in there if things aren't done correctly. Richard, I want to find out more. We are going to go to a quick ad break. For our listeners and our viewers, please do stay tuned. These ads are for your benefit and your interest. Richard and I will be back right after this.
Are you having questions about the Plumbing Industry Registration Board and the plumbing industry in South Africa? Well, then join us on the couch and in conversation with the industry experts to answer all your lingering questions about the plumbing industry. The PIRB remains committed to ensuring open and consistent communication within the plumbing industry. So, be part of the conversation. Send us your questions on email at communications@pirb.co.za or on WhatsApp on 079 833 6930. Become a part of the conversation today. Hashtag on the couch. Hashtag PIRB.
Welcome back to this technically orientated episode of the Professional Plumber Podcast with myself, Willem Klopper, and Richard Bailie. In this episode, we are still busy discussing TP valves, or for a lack of better terms, a safety valve. And before we went into the ad break, we spoke about the workings of it, what it does, its functionality, how it functions in the inside, how it is built and constructed on the inside, the purpose and the role that it fulfills. And Richard mentioned that being such a small thing, it carries such a great importance in that complete geyser system. One of the things that said that, a geyser is a pressurized vessel or a pressure vessel. And, if you get that last resort of safety incorrect, that can turn bad. And I said to myself, I said to Richard, it reminds me of a geyser exploding. Now, Richard, we've watched Mythbusters. It's one of my favorite shows to watch, and we've seen some things like geysers exploding and those kind of things on Mythbusters. But that can easily be fabricated. Is that something real? Is that a real thing that can happen? A geyser that explodes like a bomb?
What the Mythbusters did is they replicated real life scenarios. So they assumed certain things. So they purposefully shut off or removed the safety valve, and they purposely made the whole thing go pear-shaped. And you'd be surprised how often we come across geysers, and you can see this picture that is on the screen, which is the valve on the right-hand side of that geyser. You can see the higher one. It's in the wrong position. The geyser's rotated incorrectly. But in any event, had that safety valve been left to its own devices, it at least would have done some good in trying to prevent a catastrophe. But as it is there, you'll see there's just a piece of pipe, and it's connected directly to a vacuum breaker, which is effectively a stop end. So what you've done, you've blocked the access to that. You've blocked that safety valve completely. So if something were to go wrong, you've blocked it off, and it simply can't. It will want to open, but it can't. I can show you dozens of pictures like this. Here's another one. It is a safety valve which is connected to a piece of plastic pipe which will melt anyway. It then goes into a smaller rubber, because those flexible connectors you can see there are on the outside. They've got braided steel, but on the inside it's a little rubber tube, and it cannot handle either the flow rate or the pressure, and it is then joined to another smaller pipe, so that allows some water out, but it certainly won't do the job. And in this one of my favorites, it's just been installed as a plug, and I don't even know what to tell you about it. This is not made up.
The probe, isn't that probe supposed to go into the geyser part where it goes into the water? Now the probe, that thing is installed as an ornament, just for aesthetic appeal.
Yeah, that's for the garden birds to come and perch on.
Yes, like
so. No, this is not made up. This is real pictures from plumbing installations out there. So, Willem, I know when you ask about how realistic is that Mythbusters clip, and the answer is right there. This is what is experienced on the outside and on the outside. I've only got those 3 pictures. I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of pictures. This is what we're dealing with. It's as simple as that. This is now a bomb. Just something like that creates a bomb. So yeah.
You know what? It's always, again, it boils down to the fact that there's a reason why things have to be done in a specific way. There's a reason for standards that exist. In one of our episodes, you and I said that there's only one condition or that allows plumbers to actually install geysers and work with geysers, because geysers are pressurized vessels, pressure vessels. I mean, they were excluded from working. Only engineers are supposed to work with pressure vessels. But there was an exception made for plumbers, because they have to install geysers and hot water heaters, and that was on condition only if the installation complies with the requirements of SANS 10254, and if the geyser itself is manufactured in compliance with SANS 151. Is that correct, Richard?
100% right. I'm impressed.
And as a layman, hey, but the fact is, there's a reason why those standards exist. And there's a reason why plumbers have to do installations and use products that comply with those standards. Because if they don't, it looked like that. It looks like the pictures that you shared with us.
Okay, Willem, yeah, no, you're 100% right. As I said, I only showed 3 pictures, but this is something we come across hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times across the country. Every single plumber listening to this will attest to the fact that they've come across something like that. So we're not talking about isolated incidents, and it is across the board. There have been dozens of geysers that have exploded and caused tremendous damage, in some cases loss of life. Remember, the video I'm about to show you is from two geysers that exploded in 2 separate occasions, but you also just get ruptured geysers. We call it burst. It's just a term we use, but it can just be a leaking geyser, and it can be very, very hot water at high flow rates coming through your ceiling and really doing some damage.
Dit is na die water toe is. Geyser het ontplof. stukke van die geyser wat oor is. Hier stuk aan de Like guys, I'm just taking a video. Goodness gracious. Trust, you can't believe a geezer can do this. It's a bomb, my man.
And then just have a look at this next one as well.
Also listen, because we will need it definitely.
Okay, Rowan, kom kyk net.
They see that the gas will come here this one.
Hierso is die geyser se buite cover. En daar is die koper geyser se tank wat oor is van hom. Kyk hoe hy hierdie dakmoer toe geskiet.
I tell you now, the first thing that I see is, you know, it's unreal to think that it does that to a brick wall. I mean, in that first video clip, besides shooting the ceiling and the zinc of the roof and tiles of the roof away, look at what it did to that brick wall, brick and mortar. That's if it can do that to a brick wall and to that roof and things like that, the first thing that pops to my mind, I always say this. I have a 6-year-old daughter. Imagine my 6-year-old daughter was in that kitchen or in that room when that geyser exploded. That's a loss of life, right there.
100%.
That's all because either there was, by the sounds of it, you know, it's either because of, the quality of the product, a dysfunctional product, alternatively an incorrect installation. Tell us how this happens.
It's 99.9% an installation story. For that doesn't happen just because there's a faulty product. There are safeguards in place if, for example, it's a weak geyser, it will just simply start to leak. In a controlled leak, and it'll be replaced with no damage. That's an explosion, and that occurs when the safety valve is compromised. Now, another interesting thing to note is in that first clip, the second clip. In fact, I think both clips, you'll see parts of the actual geyser, and the geyser in both cases is copper geysers, and about 90% of copper geysers are 100 or 200 kPa. It's what we call semi-pressure geysers. They're not high-pressure geysers. And so we're not even talking excessive pressures here. That's a temperature scenario. It's a flash boil scenario. And it's because the safety valve has been compromised, plugged off, or not installed correctly, or damaged, or whatever the case may be. It's scary, and it's not. I mean, you could hear the language. It's both of them are South African, and it's not. This is not unique. It's not unique.
Yes. You know what? And hence the fact that plumbers and the consumers out there, you know, if there are consumers watching these videos, Richard, that's why it is so recommended and advisable to use a properly qualified plumber. So much the better when you're using one that's registered with a professional body, a professional industry body, who actually puts in effort to see that plumbers work according to the requirements of standards. Just bringing it back to that standard, and the risks associated with this is the perfect example of risks associated with plumbing work done incorrectly.
100%. Yeah, and I can show you lots more. These are the anyway. We've said enough. We've shown enough. I think we've made the point. It's not unique, and it's a scary thought. It's a scary thought. Every single home has got one. Every single home has got one of these potential bombs.
And
Food for thought.
it boils down to the plumbers taking that responsibility for their work and doing their work correctly, Richard. The fact is, they've got a decision. You always reiterate the fact that it's a choice and a decision. Sometimes you get into situations when nicks and crooks don't allow you to make things compliant. But something like a TP valve, I mean, come on. And there's no excuse for not making that compliant.
100%. You know, it's we've flogged this horse to death, and the amazing thing is, look, I know. Let's be realistic, Willem. You know, with this vodcast and some of the tech talks and the tech casts and so on. You know, we're not reaching millions of people. It hasn't got a massive coverage, so we're not. When we say, yeah, we've shown this 1,000 times and it seems like things aren't changing. Well, people haven't, you know, we're not a big broadcasting corporation. You know, we appeal to a very niche audience, so we don't get the coverage. But those, I think, that do see this, it must make some sort of an impact on your decision making going forward, especially when it comes to geysers. If you're a homeowner or if you're a consumer. And, you know, hopefully also just brings to light the importance of qualifications and qualified plumbers and competence amongst a tradesperson, you know, and so, yeah, we keep doing it. We just got to keep doing it, and we'll do it for years to come.
The other thing that I keep on thinking now is even, you know, sometimes you find that plumbers would drop off a team, and they would then leave to go and drop off or check up on the other site or whatever the case may be. But bringing back to one of the previous podcasts that we did together, we spoke about the importance of proper or adequate supervision. Can you remember that conversation we had? And this is where that steps in as well. I mean, if it is that the supervisor has the license to sign off a certificate of compliance, right? Then when he goes back to check on what work was done by his plumbers, he should properly supervise, he should properly inspect, and he should make sure that these kind of things are installed correctly.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, one can point the fingers 10 ways, you know, and it was because of this, because of that, because of that. The bottom line for me, the bottom line is this, that we must acknowledge that geysers are dangerous things, and we must acknowledge that they need to be done properly. Whatever that means in terms of implication for decision, whatever, there's now 150,000 things we can look at, but they've got to be done properly, and they've got to be done by qualified people.
Yeah.
And the only way to ensure that, and let's go back, we harping again, is a COC, a certificate of compliance, where a guy's issued it, he's now taken responsibility, and there's accountability. There's an auditor like me and 45 others in the country that go around to check that the thing has actually been done properly, because you'll find a certificate's been signed, but it's not done properly.
Yeah.
So that is how to do it. That's the answer. It's not a nice to have pie in the sky, I'm never going to reach a dream. It's got to happen. It's got to happen. And this is the result of it not having happened.
Richard, I liked how you used both those two words. We are drawing to a close of this episode, but I just want to chip in here quickly. Just with this explanation, there's a difference between responsibility and accountability, right? It's your responsibility to make sure that that work is done correctly and according to the requirements of standard, so that the risks are alleviated. And should something go wrong, because it was not, because you didn't fulfill your responsibility properly, should something go wrong, and let's say for instance, there's a loss of life, then you're accountable. Then the accountability for that loss of life is on you. because of the decision you made not to adequately supervise or not to check properly before you sign it off, or whatever the case may be. That's accountability, and I wouldn't want to be accountable for somebody's life that was lost because of an incorrect installation.
Right. You and me both, Willem.
I think there's a lot to be said in this case, and you know, off air, you and I often chat about these kind of incidents and these kind of cases that we've looked at today. I think there's a lot more of these conversations that are going to come in the future on these kind of podcasts and technical conversations that we have, Richard. But for now, we've run out of time for this specific episode. Again, I want to thank you for sharing the example with us and talking about the specific cases. So yeah, always a pleasure to have you on the show, Richard.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Willem. It is always a pleasure to be here, and it's a nice platform for us to be able to showcase these things. So all good, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. To our listeners and our viewers, that concludes the conversation between Richard and myself. However, don't go away yet, because we're going to cross over to some industry announcements. So do stay tuned for that. Other than that, it's a wrap for Richard and I. We'll see you in the next one.
An important notice for the upcoming festive season and holidays. From the 18th to the 22nd of December, the PIRB will run on skeleton staff. Our offices will be closed between the 25th of December and the 5th of January 2024. Should urgent assistance be required, there will be staff on standby. We will resume normal operations on the 8th of January 2024. As we draw to a close of 2023, the PIRB thanks all PIRB registered plumbers, as well as all our partners and associates, for working together with us throughout this year. We hope to continue to work together to continue the upliftment of this industry. The PIRB wishes you and your families a wonderful festive season. Enjoy the holidays and have a happy new year.